Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Center Sports Talk Live with the one and only Harry Chaz. Yes, you're on the right channel. I know I'm not wearing a hat. I know that is shocking to most people who are joining us tonight. But yes, I am going hatless tonight. I am really going for the Scott Van Pelt lookalike today. So, don't be alarmed. It is the same person, just without the hat. So we have an amazing show tonight. We have the one and only David Jolovitz, the health and fitness director at the center, will be joining us live very shortly. But first, I hope everybody had a tremendous weekend. It was a beautiful weekend. I hope everybody was able to go outside and enjoy the nice weather that was out there. The main thing this past weekend was the Last Dance and the last two episodes. I think the documentary was amazing. Again, very hard to watch as a Knicks fan, but at the same time, there were so many things I never knew about Michael Jordan. Good and bad, that he, they portrayed it, in the way they were supposed to, and I think some of his ex teammates were calling him out and very unhappy with some of the things that went on. They showed the flu game, and which is technically not the flu. They think it was stomach poisoning or food poisoning. I'm sorry, that they think the pizza guy spat in his pizza. Crazy stuff, but I think the whole entire thing was well put. I think it was perfect time for what we needed at this juncture with no real sports going on. I think a lot of people tuned in. I think for the young ones got a chance to see Jordan do what he does best, and he motivated. He got people up, and he gave 110% every time he came out that floor. And if he didn't, he made sure that next game, he would take it to them. He held grudges. He, if somebody, was talking trash to him, he would take it out on them just on the court and just, beating him with his skills. So if somebody happened to outscore him in one game, trust me, it did not happen twice. So it was great to watch. I think tomorrow night on ESPN they're showing the 1998, the last game of the finals versus Utah, where the lightly shove of Byron Russell to the side, which wasn't really a shove when you look at it, because his momentum was taking him that way, and Jordan just nails that shot to end that series. But on to better things. We have the one, the only David Jolovitz going to be joining us live. He's going to talk to us about many things, how to keep us centered throughout all this, where what kids should be doing on the off season as far as workouts. So we're gonna he's also a big Phoenix Suns fan, which is we'll have to get into that and figure out why. But I guess it's better than being a Knicks fan, so you can't, really complain. So we're going to see if he's available right now. Sorry. I may have lost him. There he is. All right. Hey, Dave.
Hey, bud. What's going on?
How you feeling?
Good. So Jordan actually victimized both your Knicks and my Suns. So we're in the support group together about that one.
It's crazy, being to watch that again and again. It's very tough. What he was able to do, and even sometimes when he didn't have his best game scoring wise, he found other ways to. And one moment I can remember where everybody thought Jordan was going to shoot it, and he passes it to, I think, to Bill Wennington, and Bill Wennington dunks the ball over the Knicks, and you're like, you can't believe it. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
So there's a lot to talk about. So I think the first question is, a lot of people don't know that you're the fitness and health director at the center. I've known you since, we were kids growing up in the center camp and just roaming the auditorium and playing ball.
It's true.
But you're a Suns fan, and it's very shocking to when you hear people from New York say that they're outside fans. You hear the Cowboys, you'll hear but the Suns, and I'm just curious to know how that happened.
Well, who doesn't like the sun, right, when it's shining? Growing up, there was kind of a mass wave when the Knicks were relevant in the early 90s, and I'd actually first moved to the country in 93. My dad was a lifelong Suns fan since he had moved to Phoenix when he was 18, and the sports complexes were not on every block, and they were kind of harder to find. So at the gym that he was actually working out at, he would be weight training, and right across the way, he would hear dribbling, and it was the Phoenix Suns. It was the 1969, 1970, 1971 squad. They had just joined the NBA, and that it kind of became a family thing where he decided to pass his suffering, his long, lifelong suffering, to me. And they're a fun team. Even when they lose, we're typically a fun team to watch. We've always got really good guard play. We've had Steve Nash, Jason Kidd. If you can name a guard in the NBA, chances are we're 2 degrees removed from having him played for us. Marbury, Brandon Knight, we've had them all. Eric Bledsoe.
Dan Marley was also a good shooter out there.
Kevin Johnson. We've had our share of Hall of Famers. Yeah, we just can't seem to ever win the chip. And I remember the first basketball game I had ever seen I was still in Israel. We were expecting to move to America. It was like in just a matter of a couple of weeks. And I was watching this fascinating game. Up until then, it was soccer. And Shabbat was just around the corner because it was a time delay. And I remember watching it. All of a sudden, my dad turns the television off, and I thought, wait, that's it? It's so anticlimactic. He spared me the headache of having to learn later, a couple of years later, that the Suns had actually lost that finals game. And then obviously the finals themselves, yeah.
Yeah, the Phoenix had some great teams, it's definitely in the early 90s as well, with Barkley and Sabonis and they had that, not Sabonis, I'm sorry.
Sabalas, Edward Sabalas.
Sabalas, yeah, sorry.
He was good, yeah, he was good.
They had some great things, and shout out to your dad, May, who's on here tonight. Miss you, buddy. So talking about just the fitness and wellness, a lot of the kids now obviously are not playing ball, and their season ended short and things like that. What are some of the exercises you think that that kids should be focused on to keep them centered?
Sure. Yeah. Good question. So there's always kind of a certain level of basic conditioning you want to maintain, meaning that if you jump on a treadmill, if you go for a run around the block, it's, basically you're in pretty good shape. You then, if you're an athlete especially, you want to supplement it with what they call sports-specific training, meaning if you're a guard, for example, you want to practice your handles or your dribbling. If you're a big man, you want to practice your footing. So it's very easy to kind of build a program on whatever you spend the most time doing on the court, on the field, on the diamond, is essentially what you want to practice. And that's, and the concept of practice boils back down to, if you can struggle through those workouts day in, day out, 5 o'clock in the morning the way that Kobe used to do it, or 11 o'clock at night the way that Jordan used to do it, is that when you get into game time mode for these student athletes, your brain actually turns off during the game.
Right.
And you just kind of go back to whatever natural instinct comes from your training. So you don't improve during the game, one would argue. It's actually, you get better during the training, and then at that point the brain turns off and you can just have fun.
Right. So, I mean, a lot of the kids don't realize that, part of the development of being a good athlete, whether it's in basketball or any other sport, is the training and the whether it's lifting weights or doing the stretching and all these other the different aspects of fitness. It's important because without that, you're not going to be able to keep up with the stamina, and whether it's, you have to do the cardio and all those aspects are very important to any sporting venture that you guys decide to do.
More than ever. And it could be the case where if you're even kind of a scrub athlete, but you're in the last year of your contract, if you happen to have a good year, that could be the difference of a $50 million contract, which we're actually putting on the low end of things, or it could be $300 million, depending on what the market demands. So, and the Jordan documentary is actually perfect proof, because you never saw what happened to go behind the scenes into this. You had your basic channels, you had, CBS, NBC, and if you were lucky, you'd catch the game of the week. Now with Instagram, social media, YouTube, you're catching so much more of the behind the scenes, which actually triggers that, it piques the interest of these young, generational athletes. they learn that the weight room at 12 and 13 years old isn't going to get you shorter. It's going to get you stronger and faster. And because they've had this 6 to 7 year head start, the athletes of today would dominate the athletes of a couple of years ago. It's just a matter of sport-specific training. It's not to be compared, which actually is scary with what you think is now you have 7 or 8 year old kids jumping in the next generation, and they're going to be even far superior to what you see on the court right now.
Right. Sorry, I'm watching the comments stroll in, and there's some funny ones, and so I apologize if I laugh. Some of them get me, and I can't help it. So it's funny that you say about there was a lot of speculations of when should kids start learning to lift weights? Is there a certain age that maybe they're too young and it will stunt their growth, or things like that? So you're saying around 12, 13 at that range, is that when they should be? For
resistance training, one could argue the 12 or 13. And again, you have to kind of stay in your lane. So
Right.
The basic rule of thumb for resistance training, it's very important to denote that, would be that anything that's compressive to the spine, so like squats, heavy shoulder presses, anything that push pressure down, would potentially kind of affect your growth. However, if it doesn't, if you're doing bicep curls, which doesn't put pressure on your spine, not only is it actually going to not make you shorter, it'll help with the development because it releases the hormones that your body needs at 14, 15. So you look at these O-linemen and these safeties coming out in the NFL who are 18-year-old freshmen. You look at like Greg Oden, for example. Greg Oden looked like it looked like you dug him out of a cave and kind of chipped away at him in ice.
Right.
So these kids at 18 years old are corn-fed. They've been lifting weights in their father's barn since they were 12 or 13 years old. So again, to answer your question, weight-bearing exercises you can do when you're 12, 13, as long as you're not doing heavy squats or deadlifts. Once you've built a good discipline of a year or two of basic weight training, once you then throw in those heavier compound presses, then forget it. At 14, 15, you look 18, 19. You perform 20 or 21.
But so I'm sorry, your dad is just funny. I can't help it. His comments. So for the younger ones who are not, we're starting sports now at a young age, and people are getting into travel teams at a much younger age, and even the school teams are at a younger age. What should kids focus on at that young age? Because obviously they're not going in now lifting weights or things like that. What could they do in order to, build their strength without?
It's a good question. Whether you're 13 or 33 or 93, and your fitness advice should always be tethered to the following question. Always, no matter what the age, male, female, is essentially what's your goal. So again, going back to the point guard thing, if you're looking to be explosive as a point guard, you can work on directional, you can work on your hips in a way that maybe a center or a linebacker wouldn't. So it all depends on the position you play, the sports you'd like to prefer. And I think in the was it LeBron? LeBron had some tweet out saying he was training like a football player during quarantine. And also, I think during the Jordan documentary, they mentioned that he was training to be a baseball player. It is very much true that your body has certain types. And by the way, it's an amazing miracle that your body can take on so many shapes.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't train to be a sprinter the way that you would train to be a marathoner. So with that reasoning, if a basketball player at a young age wants to be a point guard, all right, then you got to work on your handling, your vision, right? Your passing. And then if you are a baseball player, one would imagine you have to use forearms and torque and obliques. So the first thing you want to do is isolate what's my goal? What do I want to become better at? And then you do most of it. And then obviously there's the cross training that happens. You can do multiple sports as well.
Right. So, a lot, especially for the younger kids, they seem to not always understand what the importance is of stretching. Before any practice, before any game, we try to do the stretching exercises, and it's obviously not as fun as doing all the other exercises that you need to do during practice or playing real game, an atmosphere. But why is stretching so important for youth and adults before doing any type of, whether it's working out or just, playing ball?
For sure. So I'll give you the textbook answer, which is that it softens the muscle fascia and it kind of prepares your body. If you imagine a very thin skirt steak, if you take it out of the freezer, a very thin one could crack it in half quite easily. But if you were to thaw it, it becomes harder to rip to the point where you might even need a knife to get through it. So your muscle acts in the same way, where if it's soft and tender, it's a lot less likely to get punished. It recovers much faster. That's the textbook answer. That's what 99% of people would say. Me living in the 1%, I'm a huge fan of the mental preparation, the routine that sets in when the warm-up happens. So at that point, we've discussed, you've practiced all of your life, right? You practice a whole bunch of times. Now when the headphones go on and you're touching your toes, what I call the dimming of the lights is you've now entered the arena as a gladiator, and now that's when the mind begins to form itself. You're not going to save yourself with any type of last-minute strength, but what you can do is you can align the mind to then prepare properly, and at that point, your body gets the cue, oh, okay, got it, it's time to perform. That's the kind of the unspoken benefit of stretching that people often overlook.
Yeah, no, that's very well said. Now talking about after gameplay. And, you know, a lot of people don't realize also that there are certain things that athletes should be doing after a game is played. You know, take us through that. Is it the same type of, are they going into the gym now and doing some type of workout? Are they doing more stretching this way that their bodies are not, I guess, sore or achy, or they're feeling the repercussions of it, tomorrow morning?
Yeah, that's a good point. So it seems like if you're 8 or 9 years old, there's nothing you can't do in a game. You can fall down 100 times, you're never going to be sore. So for those older athletes, you want to look to ice. And what ice does to the muscle, to the joints, essentially, in layman's terms, it reduces the traffic jam, allowing blood to get to the affected spot, which means that the healing process can start earlier. So you see Kobe in his last season icing his knees and icing his shoulders. That's going to get him less sore, which means that he doesn't have to deal with a 2-day recovery. Young athletes can just focus on maybe kind of thinking back once the moment has not escaped them yet, what they could have done better, right? What they could have maybe not done as well. And then that's pretty much it. So ice for the older guys, and I would say maybe kind of a mental decompression for the younger athletes to think about, hey, you just had that game. That's that teachable moment. What can be learned? What can be processed? And let's get you stronger and better for the next one.
Is there a certain schedule that kids could sort of put together, now on the off season, as they're not playing in the sports that they are? Is there a schedule that they could put together, whether it be doing 5 push-ups tonight and then next day 10, and then what's the scale, and how gradual should they move up in doing those type of things?
Sure. Yeah, I guess my dad with the comments would have it where you want to do enough push-ups where your parents are afraid to spank you, right? If you're a young kid, you just, it's your father has to kind of think twice about punishing you. But as far as routine, it kind of goes, again, back to specifics and what are you looking to accomplish? And that can be the macro, which is I know how to do basketball training if a basketball player, but even more specifically is what can I do? Basketball, a lot is upper body strength. So you have a lot of push-ups, you have core because there's a change of direction. You've got the stamina. But taking half a step back for a second, even if you get your training wrong, the reason why it is so beneficial for children, and it helps to kind of center them, is because there's no hobby that forces you to clean up as many behaviors as possible. So what do I mean? It means that when you're lifting weights, it forces you to drink more water, right? You have to get better rest. It kind of puts you on a schedule. Those are the intrinsic benefits that nobody considers, that when you start strength training, even at a 12 or 13-year-old kid, when you don't get a good night's sleep, you don't drink a good, enough water, you can feel that difference game time. You can feel the difference while you're training. So it behooves you to then do your job and do a lot of training. So I would start off simply and just, again, go back to your goal and saying, what am I looking for? And then I would couple a little bit of cardio with some strength, and then basically whatever sport you're looking to target to.
Well, you just touched upon it about drinking water and staying hydrated and things like that. Is it better to drink water, or is it better to drink like those Gatorades and Powerades? Is one better prior to than after? Because obviously water is probably the first thing you should always be doing, but is the electrolytes important, especially for a young kid, to be drinking prior, during, and
Absolutely.
after?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, younger kids are actually made of more water. Infants, babies, I have a 3-week-old, they're made up of 70% water. It goes down to about 50 or 55% water as you're an adult or even a kid, right, like a teenager. So if something is already 55% off of what you comprised of, it would kind of make sense that you'd want more of that in your body. And now, so again, this kind of just popped in my head. It's better to drink water, spill Gatorade, and pop champagne, right? So you want to drink, you want to drink the water. You want to drink the water. You want to then get the Gatorade in your body also because that's, the electrolytes, and it's actually formulated, to replenish the things that you're losing while you're sweating. Potassium, sodium, the things that either you can't spell, as far as the elements are concerned, but also the things that kind of slip out unnoticed more than just the water. And just a fun fact for those who don't know, Gatorade is called Gatorade. You've seen the commercials because it was pioneered at the University of Florida for the Florida Gators. Gatorade.
Yes, 100%. I remember that. I remember the commercial that they put out for that. They show you the backstory of it. Yep. So let's go into a little bit of the NBA. I know you've watched a little bit of The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. We touched upon it at the beginning of the show. But I'm curious to see your take. Was there anything that you saw that there's a lot of things I didn't know about Michael Jordan. I mean, we were watching it as kids, and you were just amazed at the way he played and what he was able to accomplish, in his career. Like he was untouchable. But at the same time, you didn't realize there were so many different aspects to him where he was just he was a hard person to be around. He demanded greatness. He would push his teammates to a level that I think they would never think they could get to. Were there any things from that show that just like stood out to you and you're like, wow, I didn't know that?
You kind of hear the legend about him. It's good to see footage because, again, when you're watching in the mid-'90s and you have SportsCenter to look forward to, the behind the scenes was obviously, it wasn't to that level. I tend to, and I think it was the end of episode 7 where Jordan actually gets teary-eyed saying he understands that people found him hard to play with, and yet he would make an amazing military general, right? So this is, as a professional athlete, you've trained your entire life and you've pushed yourself, or at least you ought to have pushed yourself to the very limit. Here's a man who steps up, and where the coach doesn't, he forces that last ounce out of you. If you don't like his playing method, don't re-sign with the Bulls. Don't sign your multi-million-dollar contract. Select another team. We're adults here. So it isn't like it's you coaching the ballers and really getting aggressive with these kids, and they're not mentally ready for it. If you're not mentally ready to squeeze yourself at 25, 30 years old on the highest level, then you are a little bit weak and you are a little bit soft, and perhaps you should, play for the Oklahoma City Thunder or some other team. I do. Yeah.
It was just amazing because like I said, when you're watching it again for a second time and now, 20, 30 years, after the fact, it's just mind boggling how you just thought everything was smooth sailing, and they have Pippen, they have Kerr, they have Rodman, they have all these guys. Everything looked like it was peachy. They have the great team, and there were no problems. And now yet you see from all of this that how they exactly sometimes they didn't jive, or there were turmoil in that locker room, but at the end of the day they were able to overcome and able to go on 2-3 pizzas, which is just unheard of. And Phoenix Suns haven't lost a game in over 2 months. Thank you for the stat. That's breaking news, everybody, by the way. The Phoenix Suns has not lost a game in over 2 months. Neither have the Knicks, thank God.
Right.
So speaking about the Knicks, obviously, there was hopes on the off season that the Knicks were hopefully going to get Kevin Durant. They were hopefully going to get the Kyrie Irving. They were even hoping to get the number 1 pick in the draft in Zion Williamson. None came true.
Nothing.
They got R.J. Barrett, which is, I feel he's in a terrible situation. He could probably be a better ball player somewhere else, because right now the Knicks, between the ownership and not having consistency, with head coaching and even the players around them, there's not enough. There's not enough. Camaraderie and things like that going on for these guys to develop. A guy like Kevin Knox, who yes, he's not
took
that
a step
top
back.
tier. He went totally back,
right.
To a point where he's even if you wanted to trade him, I don't think people would even want him and take him.
Of course.
So what do you think the Knicks need to do in order to get back to the days of the 90s?
Well, it's hard in today's NBA because what they featured primarily was that toughness aspect, where even if you're going to beat them, as Jordan said, you were going to get bruised up, right? You were going to get banged up. Then look, this better than I do. The Knicks have been mismanaged and severely so for 20, 25 years. There's a poisonous culture problem that starts with ownership, and with an owner that as he's walking outside the arena, he gets yelled, hey, sell the team. And he doubles down, kicks the fans out, bans him for life. There's no excuse for a player like Kevin Knox's talent, not only to stay stagnant, because in my industry, at least, stagnant means that you're not even growing and you're actually sliding back. You've got to keep taking steps forward. Like you said, he's not even valuable trade bait at this point. Right. So it's either the wrong coaching system, which is unforgivable, or it's just you're not forcing him to train properly enough, it's unforgivable, or it's the wrong schemes, again, unforgivable. Mm-hmm. At this point now, it's a 20 or 25-year pattern, and somebody joked at one point that the Knicks are on a 30-year rebuilding plan. It starts and ends with those dynasties, with the back office, with the front office, as you will. The way the Patriots, the San Antonio Spurs, you got to build a positive culture and treat it like a good business, And if you have those personalities that simply don't fit, or the coaches that don't do their jobs and keeping the players motivated, you've got to ship them off. You've got to get rid of them.
I mean, the truth is, and I was saying it earlier, that in other shows, that I don't even care that they didn't get Kyrie and Kevin Durant, because the truth is, I mean, yes, they would totally bring some spark into New York, and obviously they went to Brooklyn, but I don't even think those were the answers. And Kevin Durant's injury prone, Kyrie is also injury prone. Yes, on any given day, if they're all healthy, of course I'll take him in a heartbeat. You tell me they're not getting injured, 100%. Sure. But just to the point that you said, there hasn't been, the culture has just been, has not been there since, when was the last time the Knicks made the playoffs? And even then, it wasn't the same like when you were growing up in the 90s and you saw going to a game as a kid in the Garden, even watching it on TV and watching them play in the playoffs was something, you like, I had my daughter even watch an old game just because it was just, you couldn't believe it. And that feeling of the Garden, and people used to say, "Oh, it's the greatest place to even play." Right. I don't think people even fear going there anymore. Why should they?
Yeah, at this point now, we're almost a generation or two removed from the mystique of the Garden, and now there isn't the fear element. You mentioned Jordan before, and you had Rivera, Mariano had the same thing. Is when these guys stepped up, you just knew, oh no, and if you weren't a fan, your stomach would drop, you'd have a pit fall into your stomach, because you knew even if they would lose, that they would squeeze every amount of talent and effort. And look, you might have a couple of Knicks players doing that, but you just don't have the back office. You don't have the coaching staff. And at that point, you're not going to attract the free agency. And I think the Knicks might have actually dodged the bullet, because history would have it that it shows Kevin Durant was a little bit of a soft athlete. Kyrie Irving thinks he thinks the earth is flat. He's a flat earther. So I'm not sure you want those two guys with their kind of sensibilities smack dab on 34th Street. They might not have made it.
Right. That's 100% true. Not everybody can play in the heart of New York. And that's goes for the Yankees and Knicks and Rangers and every New York team that's out there. The media is obviously on top of you. So Dave, I want to say thank you for, joining us. And,
yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate you as a personal friend and as a colleague as well. You do tremendous things, and I really appreciate you. Also, there's an event there's a special Zoom tomorrow night that you'll be hosting. You want to tell everybody about it?
Sure. Yeah. So the Center's got this large campaign called Centered, which it's good to promote the kind of the balance. Listen, we've had our lives turned upside down. Some might have even been off the road there even before COVID. So this is a good opportunity. It seems like we're exposed and forced to spend time with ourselves the last couple of weeks, and it might have driven our significant others nuts. But it always helps to kind of help hit the reset button every so often, and that's done in any number of ways. And the body's remarkable in that sense. If you tweak your diet, you can get balanced. If you tweak your physical activity, you can get balanced. And in a beautiful way, in a miraculous way, a lot of these things they roll into a snowball. So if you fix your diet, all of a sudden now you're a lot more likely to start, trying to sweat a little bit. Or if you're putting in the sweat equity in the gym, you're a lot more likely to cook a healthier dinner. So Wednesday's program is actually with the guys that the coaches over at Sentient Wellness. And I've had the pleasure of getting on a couple of phone calls that were initially slated to be half hour. It's like minds meeting, so we've talked for hours and hours. And we're going to be talking about what goes into raising healthy kids on and off the field, which is anything from hydration to perspiration to the goal of perfection and any type of mental attitude that they might adopt, again, on or off the field. Thank you for that plug.
No, that's it's going to be great, guys. Definitely don't miss it. And one question before we go, someone asked, and he should he should be nameless over here. How do I improve my bench press?
So in life, there's a thing called the law of specificity, which means that you get better at something the more you do it. So if you do more bench pressing, and I do know who asked the question, he perhaps does too much bench pressing and not enough of something else. You'll get better at anything you try. Anything at all.
Well, I'm sure we both feel the same way that we can't wait for the day that everybody could come back to the center and get into the gym, into the fitness center, and do those classes and see all the trainers from the center and coming back into the basketball gym. Hopefully that day will be soon. And again, I appreciate you coming on. Congratulations on the baby.
Thank you.
Hopefully ask her if she's willing to come onto the show one day. We'd love to have her and get her views on the world for the past week and a half.
The way that I know that she's a Suns fan is she wakes up in the middle of the night screaming and crying. So I know that she's realized that she's adopted a 18-40 team. So maybe one day we'll win the championship, and I can retire in happiness.
Amen. Thank you, Dave, so much. Love you, man, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you for everything you do. Your show is awesome. I try to tune in as often as I get a chance to, and listen, you might not play basketball, but you have the work ethic of a Jordan or a Kobe, and anybody who spends time around you sees that, and that's not lip service.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words. Love you, and we'll speak to you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye, man.
Bye, guys.
That was David. He's just an amazing guy. His knowledge of everything is just amazing, and he's been besides the fact that I work with him for so many years, he's been a personal friend of mine, and helped me through a lot of things, and whether it be in work or in life, he's just a tremendous guy. The Jolovitzes all around are tremendous people, and love them all. So I'm very happy that he was able to join us. And again, tune in tomorrow on Zoom. You'll see the promos out on Instagram. And it's something you definitely don't want to miss if anybody has, athletes, kid athletes. This is something you should definitely be tuning into. So definitely don't miss out. So that is the show for tonight. I appreciate everybody who joined in. Shout out to DFNE for the sweatshirt again. Loving it. Guys, go see his website. Tremendous sweatshirts. DFNE New York, NY, DFNE NY. Go check him out. Great quality. Amazing stuff. Again, thank you to David. Thank you for Mayor. Miss you, man, and everybody else who's been tuning in. We will see you again on Thursday night. Same time, same place. This is the Scott Van Pelt lookalike, Harry Chaz, signing out. Have a good night, everybody.